Thank you for joining us. As you can see, my name is Amy Culverhouse, and I'm the Head of Growth for EMEA here at BetterWorks. I've been with the company for about 5 years, and I'm based in London. Thought I'd share that since all of you are sharing where you're from in the world. We're really excited to have you here today. I am thrilled to be joined by some great speakers who I'll introduce shortly. Our webinar today is The Future of HR, Merging Skills Growth and Performance Excellence. And what a popular topic of conversation this is right now. For those of you that were in Gartner Reimagine in London a few weeks ago, you'll know that this topic was coming up constantly. So we have some experts with us to address this today. During this webinar, you'll hear from David Perring, Chief Insights Officer at the Fosway Group, and Yasar Ahmad, Global VP of People at HelloFresh. Before I introduce them properly, just a few pieces of admin. So we are recording the webinar today, and it'll also be available on demand. So you should receive a notification about that. Can see you all starting to ping comments and questions and where you're based in the chat, so keep it coming. We love an interactive session over here, so keep that coming and ping any questions through. If you have any technical questions or issues, feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A, which will come through to us. And we have a couple members of our team on standby to keep an eye out for those. And then you'll also be receiving a survey after the session. And we'd love it if you could fill that in and be very honest with your feedback. Feedback is something that we love here at BetterWorks, if you know us. So please feel free to share that. It helps us shape our future webinars as well. So just to walk through a couple of points on BetterWorks, we are committed to really empowering HR leaders to drive growth within their organizations. So we're really excited that you're here today to explore the connection between performance management and skill development to really align the skills of your workforce with the future needs of your organization. If you want to learn more about BetterWorks, you can obviously connect with me on LinkedIn. Hopefully there are some familiar faces and names out there that I've met in the past. But otherwise, we'll be at some events in the coming weeks. So for those of you based here in Europe, or for those of you lucky enough to be traveling across the pond to Paris, we'll be at Unleash World in Paris in October. Please do ping in the chat if you'll be attending that event on the 16th and 17th of October. And then we'll also be at Gartner Reimagine in Orlando on the 28th to the 30th of October. If you're attending, please swing by. I'll actually be at the Paris event myself, so hope to see some of you there. But otherwise, obviously, feel free to connect on LinkedIn. So whether you're a seasoned People Fundamentals attendee, you'll know that we do a series of these webinars, such as the one today, or if you discovered us through our newsletter on LinkedIn or our podcast series, we're thrilled to connect with you today. People Fundamentals is dedicated to empowering HR professionals such as yourselves with the tools and knowledge to shape your workforce for the better. And so we really believe in your ability to make an organizational impact by really addressing the opportunities and issues that you face today. At the center of this challenge is the pace of change. We've been talking about this for a while now, and things aren't slowing down. I can certainly feel that myself. Workplace disruptions are around us, generative AI coming into the workforce, hybrid and remote work and discussions around that continue. Hiring booms, workforce contractions, there's lots going on. It's actually quite exhausting to talk through it all. But this all makes the unprecedented feel like the new normal. And amidst this whirlwind of transformation, human-centric leadership emerges as a real guiding principle. So recognizing that developing a culture where employees feel valued and supported leads to increased engagement, motivation, innovation, productivity, And that culture begins with understanding the skills that your organization needs to thrive. So by fostering skills development and ensuring employees feel seen, heard, and supported, HR leaders like you can really create resilient and adaptable teams and really equip themselves to navigate the future of work. So that is enough from me. I'm going to introduce our speakers for today. So firstly, I'm thrilled to introduce David Perring. David, feel free to come onto the stage so everyone can see you. David's been in HR for over 30 years and has always stayed at the cutting edge of innovation. He's got a real passion for transforming how organizations approach learning and performance. And that energy and optimism is still going strong today. David is the Chief Insights Officer at Fosway Group and has a pretty unique role. He spends his time digging into the realities of corporate learning, talent development, and HR, working both with practitioners and suppliers. And so his insights come from the deep research he does for Fosway, but also his own hands-on experience in helping organization. So he's here to share some of Fosway's latest research on skills and how performance management can help drive your strategy forward. So David, it's great to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you, Amy. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm curious, as we start talking about skills and development, like to ask the question to kind of break the ice and help us get to know you a bit more. What was the first job you ever had?
It wasn't a very good start to my career, my first job. My first job was assembling PCB power units for the next retail chain. I wasn't very good at it. The first attempt they tried to test blew out the circuitry in the building. So, yeah, don't put me in charge of anything electrical. It was not a good start. I didn't last very long in that job.
Well, it sounds like you found your passion in your past, so that's good. Mine was actually stacking shelves in Sainsbury's at the age of 15. So for those of you who know the supermarket chain. So we both started in retail, I guess, people. So there we go.
Yeah,
and then alongside David today, we have Yasar. Yasar is currently the Global Vice President of People at HelloFresh. Feel free to come on stage as well, Yasar. He has experience in various HR roles with a passion for talent acquisition, talent management, inclusion and diversity, mobility, rewards, it goes on. And Yasar embraces digital innovation and automation to transform organizations' HR functions. And he's led and continues to lead large multinational change programs across multiple functions and companies. So Yasar, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for the great introduction as well. Feel chuffed.
No worries at all. It's all your achievements. But speaking of where you first started out in your career, what was your first job?
Oh, this is kind of embarrassing. I don't know. My first job probably led me to HR in a weird way, or probably helped me be a better HR person. But I was actually a bouncer for a nightclub. So
it's an interesting one.
Yeah. So I don't know how you want to take that. If I'm now the gatekeeper in HR, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, we'll go with that, the gatekeeper. Well, we've got to start somewhere, and that's a great place to start. And I'm enjoying all of the comments coming into the chat as to exactly what everyone else's first roles were. So thank you both for being here. And I'm going to pass the reins over to David now to start through his presentation for today. So keep the chat and the comments coming. But David, over to you. I'm going to leave the stage.
Thanks, Amy. And Yas, all I could think of was HR Ninja. That's what came into my mind. And maybe that fits, because I'm from talking to you earlier and last week as well, the problem-solving side of what you do and the complexity of things that you deal with are amazing. So we're going to go through our presentation today. I've got a few things that I want to really do as positioning around the future of HR, thinking about merging skills growth and with performance excellence. And we've got a nice little agenda to go through. So I'll go flick through that, because what we're going to try and cover today is why upskilling and reskilling is leading HR's priorities. And we just give a little bit of context. And I'm going to use what my boss tells me off for using other people's research, but I'm going to pull on some things from PwC because if it's good, you should use it. And then we're going to explore a little bit about how to build a high-performance culture where managers are effective skills coaches who energize and empower peak performance. I got a little bit of data to share about lessons of early adopters, what they've learned and what powers success. And then we're going to explore a little bit what's critical when aligning skills growth and that whole agenda to strategic business goals and the importance of a seamless experience for the individual team for organizational success. And what I've tried to do is I've got quite a few slides, but I'm going to skip through those because the important thing is to hear what Yas has to say about his experience, because I think it's that experience at HelloFresh, which is really enlightening and gives you a reference point as well. But also, it's important for you guys to continue your chat. And if you've got questions, please put them into the chat area or the Q&A area, and we'll make sure we get those picked up. But we're going to start off with a poll. And Kate is in the background, hopefully feverishly allowing us to go to the polls tab. And we've got a simple question. How integrated are skills development and performance management in your organization? Are they very closely aligned? Are they fully integrated? And you can put a piece of paper between them. Are they a little bit integrated, partially integrated? Are they not integrated, but you're planning to pull some alignment? Or are they not integrated at all and there aren't any plans to do anything about that? So we'd be really interested just to get your sense of where you are in your skills development and performance management journey as a kickoff. So hopefully you're clicking on that. And I don't know where the results come up. So I'm looking, I want to vote. I guess I'm allowed to vote. Oh, and now it comes up. Wow. Okay, that was fast. I wasn't expecting it to happen so quickly. But the results are in. I feel as though it's a bit like the Eurovision Song Contest for those people on this side of the Atlantic anyway. And the top result is partially integrated. So sort of going on the journey, but not totally there. The second highest result was not integrated, but planning to. That's sort of on the way. And then the lowest is fully integrated. So this maybe seems a little bit of new territory that we're exploring in terms of building that alignment between growing skills and performance. If you've got any reflections on why that's the state of your journey for you, please share that too. That'd be interesting to see and just to get some thoughts. But Yas, does that surprise you that there's maybe less progress around that alignment of skills to performance?
Yes and no. I think yes, because there isn't like a fully fledged program out there that people can copy and paste. No, because I think a lot of people have skills development as a focus, but it's siloed within teams and management and not necessarily driven by an organization view. And I think that's why some people will say, hey, it's not really fully developed yet because we don't have an organizational view.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think that points to the fact, to some extent, the whole initiative, or what we hear people talk about as being skills-based organizations, is still early days and I'll say early progress, because people have been doing it maybe since 2016, but even the progress they've made isn't necessarily as advanced as you might assume.
Yeah.
Cool. Right then, so I'm going to try and skip through this bit. So this was our first question first item on our agenda, which is why upskilling and reskilling is leading HR's priorities in today's complex and dynamic world of work. And as I said, I was going to try and pull on some research. And what I've done is I've picked on some research from the PwC. And they do an annual CEO survey. And I'm not sure if you follow it. If you don't follow it, it's really worthwhile picking up. Just type in PwC CEO survey, and it will give you a little overview of what CEOs are thinking about for the year ahead. And they've been doing this since 2014. And the interesting line on the chart on the left is the red line, which shows you how pessimistic, should I say, how negative CEOs were thinking about the economy. And actually, they weren't being too negative until something happened in 2020, which we can probably all remember, when things got very negative very quickly. And there's been a bit of a bounce back, and things recovered in terms of people's optimism or negativity. But last year, think people got more negative again. The headwinds from the sort of maybe the post-COVID depression hit again. And it's only this year that people have sort of got a bit closer to being maybe a bit more optimistic. But what's interesting about their reports from PwC is the way they label them. What they labeled this one was thriving in an age of continuous reinvention. And they're talking now about organizations increasingly needing to reinvent themselves to survive and thrive in the modern environment, just like Amy was saying at the kickoff. And the reason they do that is that they ask this question to CEOs to say, in 10 years' time, do you think your organization will still be around? And a shocking, right? I think this is amazingly high. 45% of global CEOs think their organization will no longer be economically viable if it continues doing what it does today. And that's got worse and worse over the last 2 years that they've asked that question. So the sense of being vulnerable to technology, changes in the environment, changes in the political situation are becoming more acute. And that's encouraging CEOs to think more and more about how they reinvent their organization and make it fit for the future. And at the root of that is a lot of technology demands and a sense of Gen AI maybe revolutionizing business processes, business organizations, changing the world of work. Maybe that's overclaimed. But there is this push around actually CEOs thinking that Gen AI will help them weather some of the challenges of the future by making maybe processes more efficient, making more intelligent decisions, et cetera, et cetera. So there is this sort of movement towards those areas, but actually maybe the pace of change isn't as high or as fast as we might hope. And one of the interesting things, I think, is just that sense of, is that true for your organization? Are you feeling the pressures of change and the pressures of having to reinvent work? Is that just a CEO survey story? Is it your story? And maybe that's a question for you, Yas, in terms of how important is reinvention to an innovative provider like HelloFresh? And how are you getting your C-suite behind it? Are they already pushing you, or are you having to push them?
Firstly, love the question. I'm very passionate about this because I've done a lot of research on change management and sitting down with product managers and looking at this slightly differently to traditionally we've done in the past. So for me, reinvention isn't a one-time effort. It's a constant effort, and skills are the building blocks of reinvention, right? So if we think of think of Apple. How many times do you get a software update? And there's a slight adjustment here, a slight adjustment there. For the users, there's more improvement. But they pitch it and sell it as iOS 18 is the brand new amazing thing. And you kind of upgrade and you're like, hold on, I don't really see much of a difference here. But the behind the scenes has changed significantly. And at HelloFresh, we believe that the best investment a company can make is in the growth of its people, right? The returns are exponential. We're not just filling roles for today. We're building capabilities for tomorrow's challenges. And so how do you get the C-suite behind what we're doing? And one of the key things here is it's very hard to convince C-suite on priorities. They're constantly context switching on daily from a business, operations, supply chain, marketing, and then people sometimes get stack ranked below, like at the bottom. And then when someone's leaving or there's promotions, it gets. So how do you frame it where skills are the currency of the future? And I think part of that is actually taking it back to the basics. Hey, C-suite, how many admin people do you have in your organization that could shift to X role, Y role, Z role? And just simply asking very basic questions to see if they can understand the skills that exist in their company, and then making them realize that, oh, crap, I don't actually know how many people we have. And the bigger the company, the more apparent it is. You realize, oh, skills today translate into a sustainable success for tomorrow because I know I'm missing X, Y, Z, and I know I've got too much of A, B, C. And so it's not just about hitting numbers, obviously, it's about developing a workforce. So like shifting that thinking to, okay, I've got these chess pieces, how do I move them around to successfully navigate the game?
So is that a conversation that you have with them about, so where's the sort of North Star for the organization? How's that being buffeted or being impacted by your competitors or the changing landscape? How ready are we to execute the future? Are those some of the sort of challenging conversations that come in your direction, or do you send them back up the chain of command?
The way I looked at this, if you try to address this as one big program, it's too big. It's too big, it's scary, it's a lot of work for you. You've got BAU, you don't have the resources. God knows we're already understaffed as HR, most teams as big two. So you have to present it as milestones. Okay, what is my end goal? Work backwards and understand what the milestones are. End goal, skills-based organization. Okay, milestone 1 would be, firstly, let's map out all our talent, understand the skills needed. Milestone 2, where can we shift and rechange our job families, job catalogs to understand, okay, this group of people have been, because we've developed organically, we've misplaced these people in the wrong buckets. Actually, these people are hidden within a certain job title when in actual fact, they're more suited for this. So if you can look at the job title, like a simple exercise, take all the job titles for all your employees and then map them just yourself, don't even discuss it with anybody. What do you think this person can fit into in terms of job families? That gives you a really quick view of, okay, actually 20% of our workforce is actually misaligned or is aligned. And that's where milestone 1 begins. And then you start to iterate like a software update, slow and steady, 25% change at max, never really or 50% because people, it's not palatable.
So you're almost fueling the fluidity of the organization, understanding where things are to help shape it for the future, thinking about it as being maybe a fluid system rather than a fixed system that needs to go through a big shift and change.
Yeah, it's a long game. Get people used to the operation.
Yeah, cool. Well, and my next slide, and I think it's just trying to put a bit more context around maybe why skills and reskilling is so important. And I'm not sure if you experience yourself, Yas, in terms of the availability of skills. And one of the things that comes out in our research when we ask HR people about, so what's the most significant business challenge that your organization is facing? Pretty much consistently over the last 2 or 3 years, the availability of skills has come out on top. People find it difficult to hire in the skills that they need, maybe because they're emerging skills or just because demographics. It's difficult to find the people that you want, that they're working somewhere else, they're not necessarily aware of you. So actually that availability of skills creates some challenges, and that beats in HR's view of the organization, increasing performance and profitability, increasing business agility, and also managing the impact of automation and robotics, right? And those were sort of the top 4 things last year, which astonishes me because I thought it'd be all about customer satisfaction and performance outcomes. But the themes that you talk about, yes, in terms of that increased business agility, that's really up there in terms of those top priorities. It's number 3 in the list. What we also hear when we ask people within HR how much of a priority is building skills becoming to the future success of your organization, it's pretty much everybody, right? If you look through and say, actually, it's a high priority, it stays the same. Your 74% say it's high priority. There's only 0% who say it's not a priority for their organization, or 2% who say it's a low priority. So this is almost like a universal thing that is out there as part of the pressures on HR teams. And in terms of sort of just reflecting on how significant the gaps are the performance or the skills gaps, maybe that means performance gaps within organizations as well. Again, a similar number, 3/4, let's round it up, round it down, say they have significant skills gaps. And there's only a small number who have very significant skills gaps, but they're probably focused in particular areas, but quite significant skills gaps builds up. And actually, there's a significant number who don't know. So they're in the dark. I always take a don't know as a no. I say that to my son. And then insignificant, there's only 4% who think they've got the skills they need, really, right? And this builds a pressure of execution. So how are we going to do the things we need to do tomorrow, even the complete things we do today, if we haven't got the people who can do those roles? And I'm sure you're feeling similar pains in your roles. And it's easy to get sort of seduced into the thinking that this is just about technical skills. It's just the people who can do the AI programming or manage the new hardware or write the new piece of software skills. Actually, there's a lot of things that come out as equal, if not supersede it, right? So things like leadership and management. Yes, you can have all the geeks in the world, but if they're not focused and aligned and motivated, they're not going to deliver. If people, even geeks, can't work together, then they're not going to produce things. So this sense of having teamworking, leadership, having great interpersonal skills to get things done, having business skills to create results, and I love what you said about change management, having the ability to transform a business rather than just have great ideas. These things all are part of the mix of the sort of technical skills and interpersonal skills, and increasingly intrapersonal skills, the skills that enable us to be good at manage our resilience, put ourselves out to places, and push ourselves into new situations, or just think, actually, this is how I need to manage my energy or over energy to be more effective. So these things really matter. And it's not just about that sort of sense of the technology, even though you get seduced by the AI story, but how you even start to understand the skills you have and the organizations and the skills that you need for tomorrow is not a trivial task. And again, then maybe this is a rhetorical question that if anybody's got some answers in the audience about how they're approaching diagnosing what skills they need today and tomorrow, please feel free to put them in the chat. And in the meantime, I can ask you, Yas, are there things that you're doing? Because sometimes people don't know what they don't know, to use that Donald Rumsfeld unknown unknowns thing. But
yeah. So you have two views, in my opinion. You have the organizational view, which is we try to understand our talent with the data we have. And then the employee-led view, which is employees can share their skills that they understand, know, and feed into that bigger model. So we started by mapping out where we are today and where we want to be tomorrow. So what are the skills we need tomorrow? And then we made it crystal clear that this isn't about high performance, because a lot of people confuse that. This isn't about, productivity, because a lot of that can be driven by just working harder, driving people to work longer, etc. And it's about working smarter. So with the right skills in place, what can we deprioritize? So using some data insights, we kind of looked into and pinpointed the gaps. And in the short solution was to drive some learning programs to bridge some of the immediate needs. But beyond that, it's about kind of looking at how do we change the shift in the culture of people to go from, okay, I'm a high performance team because I work really damn hard. How can I be a high performance team by working really smart? And I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding there.
Yeah, no, I get that. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think there is a whole sense of actually what granularity do you get into when you define a skill, for example? Is it a broad skill? Is it communications? Or do you have to get into the minutiae of sales communications and influencing around sales? How did you get into the detail of that? Is that something that you've explored in
so
much detail?
We did it. I don't know how much I can share, but I'll share what I can. I'm going to say something that might make people shudder a bit. And this is all about the pace of what we wanted to do. So our goal was first understand the skills we need and where our talent exists today. If you're trying to run that program, I did it in the space of 2-3 months, which usually takes about a year to map out, everything and do it properly. But what we did was we reversed it. So we said, okay, we're going to do the mapping in the rewards team, and we're not going to take any customer input. And then what we're going to do is present that mapping and say, you've got 30 days to review this. And everybody kind of flooded in. They were very upset. A lot of leaders, everybody saying, hey, you misunderstood this, you've done that. And it was intentional. And the reason it was intentional because we had such a short window to do this. And the reason it was so short is because we want to move quickly, but we also want to drive this change in an iterative fashion where we can learn the mistakes we made. So by doing this, we learned a lot very quickly about, okay, we don't understand our skills, or we misunderstood this. And actually that function there is completely out of whack, and everybody's called a product manager, but in actuality, they're recipe developers or whatever it is, right? And so this form of aggressive approach It's not for the light-hearted, I'd say that.
Yeah. So you have to be resilient, but offering that piñata, for want of a better phrase, for people to get excited about and release their energy, it sounds like a really quite interesting approach to get the level of engagement that's needed to get the organization to move and take it seriously.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. So I'm cautious that I mustn't delay on my slides a little bit. Is what we know is actually the upskilling and reskilling as a result of the availability or challenges around availability of talent is driving upskilling and reskilling up the priorities for learning teams. This is the first year, and we've been doing this survey for about 10 years, that compliance and regulatory training hasn't been number one. So this sense of reskilling, upskilling being the sort of sharp point of HR is really sort of rammed home from here. Upskilling and reskilling used to be about number 4 in the list. So it's really moving things along. But despite it being an important subject, we know that most L&D teams aren't very geared up to do upskilling and reskilling very well. It's something that they don't necessarily find easy to do. Only 17% say they are very effective at upskilling and reskilling. The vast majority think they're quite effective. There's a small number, 20%, who say they're ineffective. But it's just that sense of, actually, if you're going to be good at something, be good. You need to be very effective at skills if you want to get them right. So trying to upskill yourself or get better at that is something that's important. And now we come to another poll. So we've got something else that we need to ask you again. So Kate, I'm going to have to ask you what the, excuse me, to activate the poll for us. So go to the polling tab, and it says, which area of skills development do you find most challenging to implement? And basically what we've got here is a choice of identifying the right skills to develop, ensuring consistent training across the team, measuring the impact of skills development, or integrating skills training into daily work. So out of all of those, it would be great to see what you might choose. I'm going to choose one because I'm not sure if I'm allowed to vote, but I have voted. And hopefully those votes are coming through to you, Kate. And whenever you feel as though you're able to share the results, that'd be interesting. But which areas of skills development do you find most challenging to implement? Is it the identifying the right skills, ensuring consistent training, ensuring that you impact? And okay, interesting results. So again, in terms of the areas that you find most challenging, identifying the right skills to develop was a third. Another third, measuring the impact of skills development, so knowing it's made a difference, and ensuring consistent training across the team. And I missed out the one at the bottom because I need to scroll down, and integrating skills into daily work. So, Yas, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on those results. Are they something that you'd think would reflect what's happened at HelloFresh?
Yeah. I can deep dive into this a bit more. I think it's about the. I guess it's about. It's also the state of mind for a lot of managers where they are currently about protecting their teams, building their teams, of the insecurity of the marketplace at the moment. Like the elephant in the room that we as HR people are trying to avoid is, if we don't reskill, we're laying off. And that's something that, people think about, but they don't talk about.
Yeah. So it's almost future-proofing the individual as much as it is future-proofing the organization.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think we internally at Fosway, we always talk about employability more than career paths, because I think in this dynamic environment, it's hard to guarantee a career path, but you can help people build their employability to whatever's going to appear in the future. But just overall, just to sort of come back to sort of the questions that we asked, the reason that we sort of highlight is this sense of HR not being L&D not being very effective necessarily at developing its people, is that to some extent, actually, you're a 50-50 chance of organization thinking that they're good at investing enough time to create skills development, investing enough in rewarding skills development. So actually maybe either giving people a bonus or sort of showing that there's some connection to their career path growing, or their employability within the organization growing, or getting hired and promoted, or actually just investing time in career planning based on skills. Most don't. It's 50-50 chance you've got an organization that thinks it's good at doing that. And I think it's one of those things that actually there's a lot to be learned from the best practice of organizations who find ways of creating managers' expectations that they need to give time to grow skills, that they do reward skills growth as part of their bonus, so to incentivize that, but also spend enough time talking about what the future may bring, just to your point, Yas. So overall, Yas, just from what's happening at HelloFresh, what are you doing to build the skills needed for tomorrow? And how do you make sure that time is provided to focus on upskilling for those audiences that need it?
Yeah, this is like a 3-pillar. I'll give you a 3-pillar answer here. So the first is understanding what are the consequences for managers if they do not build the skills for tomorrow. And then back to that elephant in the room, really clearly explaining to people, hey, we need to turn people from I-shaped to T-shaped, T-shaped to cone-shaped. Then it's about liberating managers and allowing them to do that. So we created what I call a ecosystem of skills. Managers are no longer just leaders managing, I'm going to offend a few people here, and I don't intend to, but I also don't care. This is my opinion. Employee-led learning, for me, is a bit lazy. And so how do you get managers to help that? And how do you make them architects of skills building? So paving the way for high performers. We believe that the best way to build for tomorrow is equip people with the tools they need today. So equipping managers. So our learning and development initiatives have kind of taken a shift from individually led to more academies. Can we build academies within our function? This is very common in the tech world, where they have academies, tech assessments, tech accreditations, that even Google has their own ones. Right? So we don't just ask our employees, hey, you go upskill yourself. We kind of want to empower the manager to build the skills for tomorrow, but they also need to have a very vested interest in the growth of the company and say, okay, well, I know our targets for 2025, 2026 as a company is to get to X, Y, Z. So not being what I like to call long-term orientation for one of our DNAs. Just as a manager, you should understand the business consequences of our strategy, that you can then plan for that, not just in your little bubble. And so you can then act as a coach, as a mentor, providing space for learning to say, actually, this is going to help us in 12 months' time. Explaining the context, because a lot of people don't have that context. They just, but I've got, 10 targets, KPIs to meet, this to meet that. And so, but tomorrow you won't have those KPIs because you won't be here. Okay, let's build those academies to
That's quite a challenging sell, right? That's taking the challenge yourself position rather than the easy path, isn't it, really?
You can lead with a carrot or you can lead with a stick. And I think when times are tough, you've got to be a bit honest, and it kind of comes across as you're leading with a stick. But, we do it in a way, obviously I'm giving you the rough end of the information here, but with employees, everybody's going to have an opinion. You're going to upset people, and engagement may drop. But the fact is, it's better for everyone. And they only see it 6 months, 12 months down the line, where they're like, oh, I don't have these skills. Now I have them. So you've got to be very confident to defend your decision and explain to business leaders who come back and say, hey, my engagement's low. My team is upset with this decision. Why are we doing learning academies? I don't have the time. I don't have the space, et cetera, et cetera. To say, actually, no, sorry. Here is the business outcome. And actually, we need to focus on this.
No, that's really cool. And I love the bit that you said about almost that, and using that sort of lazy L&D to say self-development and putting the onus on managers to energize their people and excite them about the future and the skills that they need to develop as well as part of that maybe performance conversation. That's a great part of the story.
I'd just like to add one more thing. As a company, this isn't fully fledged, built into our ecosystem, but something I try to drive, at least within my teams, where I say 70% of your time should be within delivery items, and then 20% on process excellence improvements, so constantly re-looking at what you've done, and then 10% should be innovation, so looking at how you can automate, innovate, using generative AI, using whatever. And as individuals, if you can just do that within your own scope, that's also a big plus, because now I speak to people and they're like, hey, I'll give you an example. Generative AI has helped me be a nicer person. Why?
Yeah.
I'm not a nicer person. I'm still the same person, but generative AI helps me create my emails, which come across a lot more politer, faster, drafting my emails for me easier, et cetera, et cetera. And this all feeds into kind of having that mindset of, okay, I've got to constantly develop, iterate, et cetera, et cetera.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because that almost sounds like you're creating this sense of a quality circle, which says, so what do we need to do to be better tomorrow? What innovation can we explore? How can we develop the skills that enable us to deliver that innovation within our own area? Maybe how it butts up to other silos or other parts of the business as well. So a real sort of from the roots up feed rather than top down force.
Our CEO is incredibly good at articulating this, and he has a really firm belief where, as individuals, we need to be our currency is our time. So where we spend our time is incredibly important. And, for me, one of the rules I put in place about 5-6 years ago was very simple. And I'm talking now about teams, and you all here are listening. Like, do you have 4 hours free every day? And how could you create 4 hours free every day and then use that time to develop yourself? And always I get this, and I can open my diary, share my screen. For the last 4 years, I've always had 4 hours free every day. In fact, tomorrow I have 8 hours free. Next day I have 7 hours free. That's because I just push meetings out of this existing slot. And this allows that room. And it's very simple, but people can't get over the very basics of, okay, I've got to change my mindset. And now I've got to enforce this mindset across the organization. And it's really hard to do that because you might be able to change yourself, but changing everybody is incredibly hard unless you have good data, good outcomes, clear KPIs, clear business vision, et cetera, et cetera.
Cool. Thanks, yes. I just noticed David Lynch's note. David, we'll come to that question at the end. What I'm going to do is skip through a few more things because we just want to define a few elements from the cover our agenda. We will come back to you. And what I'll try to do is get Kate to move that into the QA area so we don't miss it towards the end. But and I'm sure there were some other questions earlier on that we mustn't make sure we miss. So we'll find a way of getting those in the QA and getting an answer at the end. But just to sort of think about, we talked about skills, the drivers behind skills, the importance of skills preparing organizations for the future. But is it enough to have skills to be a high-performing organization? Is that enough? And again, it's a bit of a rhetorical question, but I think equally it's like, so how do we define high-performing organizations? Is it the best people working on the right work at the right time, right? That's maybe a bit of a resourcing side conversation around attract, retain, align people. Is it about that people work really, really hard and they're working 24 hours a day? They're really tenacious. They do great team working. They're go-getting. They never stop until things are delivered. Is that what a high-performing team is? Is a high-performing team just the people with the best skills, with the richest set of capabilities who can do things the best way? Or is it something else? Is it about the organization, like you said, Yas, which does the smartest things to the highest value with the least effort? That's maybe about being innovative and evolving, embracing new ways of working, being a bit more groundbreaking. So, and Yas, from your point of view, again, I don't know how this conversation plays out with your managers and your leadership about how you define what a high-performing organization is and what you're doing to sort of bring it to life today in parts of the things that you talked about already.
Depends who you ask. If you ask CEOs, they'll say, that they've got if you ask any business leader, there's a shareholder supremacy mindset, which is how can we create more revenue with less headcount and more, less operating costs, right? Of course, that's standard. 10 headcount generating 100 million versus 100 headcount generating 100 million. You're always going to get a headcount discussion there. Yeah. If you ask managers, it's about speed, because they're constantly delivering on KPIs. You ask a middle management, it's all about impact and how they can, deliver for the organization. So each person has a valid argument. But where do you empower employees to become self-starters at every level? That's where the challenge is, right? And so let's move away from the high performance organization and more like how can you be the best version of yourself in your role and deliver with impact. I think that's a more important question, which I don't think we ask enough of. I think we need to more challenge our current status quo within teams and then lead that through as an organization in our appraisals, in our development plans, in our personal development plans, in our promotion cycles, and everything else. Like, how do you make it about that person's journey and not just their impact, and helping them understand that if they help themselves, they will get better and help the business. And yeah, it's a hard one to answer. I could spend all day explaining this in more detail.
Yeah, but I think you've done a fantastic job, because I think you've really given that sense for HelloFresh. It's about from the individual out, and empowering that rather than being a goal from the top down, if that makes sense. So it's about that be the best that you can be, and then everything's focused around that sort of conversation. And that's a really simple thing also for managers to run with, right? Keep it simple, make it easier, because it's an easy thing to absorb and put into practice, maybe. So I love that. That's really brilliant. So just the final couple of things just to go through in terms of what lessons are being learned from early adopters around skills-based organizations. It's still early days for most organizations, but those who have gone down this skills-based route, from a Deloitte study 2 years ago, they found that if you've adopted a skills-based organization approach, you're almost 80% more likely to provide a positive workforce experience. So actually adopting skills in a skills-based organization drives lots of benefits for the individual and the employee experience. They also found that around 2/3 of organizations are more likely to achieve results compared to those without a skills-based approach. So from the early adopters, there seems to be a significant benefit to the organization overall and the employees themselves. Whether it was because they were just really keen and they had the momentum and they were the lucky breaks at the beginning, who knows? But that's where the sort of direction of travel's gone. But we know that it's still mainly for early adopters. We did some survey research back in 2021, and we found that only 5% think that they're very effective at matching their workers to new opportunities and roles based on what they know about their skills. We found that only 7% have a fully integrated approach to skills. So earlier on, I think you're maybe a little bit ahead of some of those organizations when you did your answers as to the poll earlier. And only 1/3 consistently use people's skills and capabilities to help them reboard or reassign them in the workforce. So Yas, in terms of what you're doing at HelloFresh and reshaping your admin teams to focus on new areas, you're in a sort of early adopter group, because most people are still trying to suss this out and find their way. And that's, I think, a significant challenge. And what we find when we talk to organizations is there seems to be a little bit of a journey that they go on. They get people to build an individual profile. Sometimes they use skills validation, going back to David Lynch's question, to try and get an understanding of what skills are there. And there's a whole minefield about what's the accuracy of that? Do we need levels of proficiency or not? Or is it enough to say that somebody's got the skill? There's a whole can of worms that creates a lot of complexity, especially around aligning things around learning, for example. So that creates a lot of headaches. Then you've got the thing about what's the future of work going to look like. You've got the whole skills graph of trying to align people to their skills and also create a normalized version of that skill and link it to the future of work and understand whether you've got any gaps. Let alone, is there things that you can help people develop, or courses or programs or interventions that will help them fulfill those gaps, let alone then enable them to maybe get some recommendations about what work they should be doing, and then put their hands up and either do the learning or take on the new role and grow their capability before they have got new boundaries of capability, which then enable you to put them into new jobs. So most people haven't got very far in that journey. There's loads of bear traps all the way through from, as you said, the proficiency thing, all the way through to actually even defining what the skills are. Do they need to be more task orientated? Do they need to be more generic? It's a really difficult thing to get through. And that's what we've sort of found so far. There are some people who've made a lot of leaps, but they're a small minority rather than the vast majority. And I think that sort of maybe takes us to this question for HelloFresh in terms of, in your skills-based organization journey, where are you up to? And how are you looking to get managers to bring skills to life in the performance conversation a little bit more?
Yeah, so where are we in our journey? I can sit here and say we're well on our way, right? Based on our achieved what we've achieved, what we've got planned. But there's an element here that I think everybody needs to take into consideration, which is the human element, right? Are we creating human-shaped experiences? And just a very fundamental, simple example is the promotion process. You know, a lot of individuals, a lot of employees are thinking about how can I get promoted, right? And this drives skills-based interest, right? And so if you take the simple example of the pie promotion of success, which is a model, I can't remember who designed it, but he said 60% of people are promoted based on their exposure to senior leadership, 30% is based on what people think of you, and 10% is based on performance. And if you survey your existing organization and just ask them how much of that is true to them, a lot of them will come up and say, yes, that is true. Like who I'm exposed to, what people think of me, and then performance. And this is a fundamental problem because now you're trying to drive a skills-based organization where the actual recognition is the issue, which is driving the behavior on skills. So, you know, there is a two-part problem here. One is you're trying to build the skills, but you also need to change the way we identify key performers in our organization. And I've been in countless across all organizations where I've been in promotion committees and people have said, I don't know that person. Well, it doesn't matter. You don't know that person. What, you know, and there is that human element we have to really factor in here, which is, you know, the selfishness or I wouldn't say selfishness, actually, I'd say the self-interest.
Yeah.
So just back to your original question, we've really seen an improvement in how we engage our workforce, right? Skills no longer are just something we track, they're something we build. But we don't just plan for the future, we have to plan for like today, tomorrow, next week, in our appraisal cycle, like, okay, hey, the conversations we're having around people's performance, can we just shift it more to the skills-based? And, you know, managers are like, but you know, this person in that meeting didn't do this. It's like, well, actually, let's focus on the skills again. Let's not focus on one fleeting moment.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for managers as well.
Yeah. And going back to David's question and the chat about the validation of skills and proficiency levels, is that something that you're wrestling with? Have you got some sort of answers that you've explored around that? Are you parking it, or are you going into that sort of sense of, yeah, they're an expert, they're intermediate, they're foundational?
Yes.
They're not helpful even.
It's helpful, but I tell you where it becomes problematic. It becomes problematic for organizations who link competency to salaries, right? And a lot of organizations do that. Oh, this person is an expert, thus they fit in this part of the salary band. And then you've got an existing employee who hasn't been moved to that salary band. So there's always this idea of expert. Okay, I'm an expert, so what are you paying me? Are you paying me the same as a beginner? And you've got to be very careful here. And I think that's where it becomes, again, back to the human element of skills-based organizations, a lot of time we don't talk about is what are the repercussions we have to, and this is essentially the whole thing as HR, we need to be great salespeople. We need to sell the hell out of this to our C-level, because if they don't understand the impact of this, then they're not going to buy into the repercussions we need to deal with, which is, hey, salary bands, adjusting people's salaries, doing this, doing that. They're not going to buy into that. So you have to do a really fantastic job of selling it first, and then influencing them like that Dale Carnegie, win friends and influence people. Whether you got to don't just do a presentation or one paper. You need to wine and dine your C-level to really get them to understand this, right? Not literally.
Yeah. But it's interesting, isn't it? That whole sense from, if you're going to use those things around proficiency and expertise levels, actually that's a developmental springboard rather than and a target for personal growth, not a dependency for personal reward. And I think that's the thing I took away from what you said there.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, Amy, I'm conscious that we've got to the last 5 minutes, and I'm sure there's still a few questions that were floating around in the Q&A or in the chat that we probably should direct in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You answered a few with this question. There are actually a few questions on, HR and leaders knowing the importance of skills, but actually how do you enable managers and leaders to drive it? So you just touched upon a few of those. One good question that came in, how have you found that the definition of individual skills requirements results from determining future organizational capabilities? And that was from Stephen Jones.
So that's okay. So excellent question, in fact, because capacity is an issue in my team, in every team, in every rewards team, right? So trying to do a fully fledged program is always a bit difficult. So we A/B tested it and kind of iterated it in the sense, okay, first let me just understand what I've got, and then let me understand what I need. What I need is a developing discussion and a constant revolving door. What I got at the moment is more kind of, okay, set in stone, let's just do a one-off exercise, understand what we've got, and then build what we need. And I guess utilizing a lot of our existing HRIS systems, kind of understanding that and building a system that's self-service is something that's quite important. I don't think I'm answering the question properly. I got to maybe connect with me on LinkedIn and I'll answer it in a bit more detail, because I got to think about how I answer that without sharing too much information.
But it's a really challenging question. What we've seen in other organizations is they do engage with almost market intelligence, software providers, so to speak, people who are tracking the skills trends within an industry, trying to make some smart guesses about the impact of AI on roles and how that changes tasks and how that may shape the business, your business in the future, levels of automation and things like that. And there are providers who focus just on that area of what does the future might hold. This is how that might impact your organization in the future and affect its roles. And it's not to say that it's a great, perfect answer, but it's a catalyst for conversation about if that is one of the possible futures, what should we do about it and where are we at to sort of drive the conversation with the C-suite about what that may mean for us.
Yeah, thank you. An interesting question that I think is relevant. It's certainly one that I come across a lot here in speaking to organizations in Europe. How to navigate workers' councils with this subject. So
I'll defer to Yas on that one.
This is a big subject, but any advice that you can give? This is a question that came up in the chat as well. And then, that would be great.
From HelloFresh's Workers' Council is listening, please log off. Okay, so am I revealing too much? I guess, let me tell you my honest opinion. You don't need to share your entire plan. You can just share what your short-term objective is for the one, break it down. So the goal is X, you've still got the whole alphabet to go through. So milestone A, I want to achieve this. Then milestone B, I want to achieve this. Sometimes when you get a fully fledged program and share at the Works Council or any leader, business leader, HR leader, doesn't matter. It sometimes scares them that, this is too much of a change. And it goes back to my original point of 25% change at a time is probably more palatable than trying to do a whole rehaul of 1,000%, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you. Yeah, Erica commented in the chat that she was excited to hear your response on that. So thank you for that. Well, I think
I'll give you more details.
Great. Thank you, Yas. Lots of comments coming in the chat around how much they enjoyed the session today. So thank you both so much. We're coming to the end of the session. So Thank you for sharing your research, your experiences, insights. Like, I love the dialogue between the two of you. I certainly learned a lot today. And thank you to the audience for attending and for all the questions. Certainly connect with us, and we'll try to address as many of them as possible. But yeah, thank you, David. Thank you, Yas. I really enjoyed the session today.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Yas, for a great contribution. It's amazing.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.